UK lecture with Jens Leopold Mortensen. Account very briefly for the most important challenges that the UK is facing right now. I will divide the challenges into 4 different categories: politics, economy, foreign policy, and the green transition. Politics. Last year was a complete mess regarding politics. The year started off with Partygate, which was when Boris Johnson held a lot of parties in the office, which violated the restrictions of 5 people or less during lockdown. This resulted that he had to resign as Prime Minister. His successor, Liz Truss, had an awful campaign and which only lasted 49 days. Her successor, Rishi Sunak, which is the current Prime Minister, and has been ever since. His opposition, Keir Starmer, from the Labour Party, will be interesting to follow in the 2025 election. Economy. Due to the triple shocks of corona, inflation, and the Russian-Ukrainian war, which especially the Russian-Ukrainian war caused the energy crisis because the UK was very dependent on Russian gas because they only have gas boilers, where in Denmark we have district heating, and gas boilers is actually the least energy efficient way. Due to everything, the cost of living crisis have been a major part of especially the poorest people in Britain, and also it's very difficult for the UK government to do anything about it because they are in 103% government debt of their GDP. Foreign policy. The UK foreign policy about Brexit was Global Britain, which was like the dream to create this like strong global Britain again, which would be made by independence from the EU. But we have seen ever since, and this really ties with economy as well, that Brexit and taking Britain out of the EU single market has very much damaged the UK economy, because in Britain export requires paperwork which is complicated and costly. We have also seen that in the article on the right, this one, that Andrew Rawnsley describes that despite their global Britain rhetoric, both the UK's soft and hard power has diminished under 13 years of conservative rule. So by hard power he means like military power, and by soft power he means like cultural influence on the entire globe. Green transition. In Europe we have emissions trading scheme, so it costs to have a permit to emit. But in the UK they have their own emission trading schemes, but they give away so many permits and actually on free, and that has created like this slowdown in the green transition. Analyze the government's effort to curb these challenges. I will again divide the problems into 4 different categories. Politics, you could argue that it is sorted because in Rishi Sunak they have got a very stable Prime Minister, and by the 2025 election they will also revote again, and most likely it would turn into the Labour Party's winning with Keir Starmer, because the Labour Party leads the poll by 45%, and there has also become a tendency within Scotland to like sort of dismiss the Scotland independence movement and vote for Labour Party instead. So most likely it will be Keir Starmer and the Labour Party winning. Economy and foreign policy. Both Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak realizes that increased benefits for the poorest people is the way to go, because with the cost of living crisis and the high inflation, which is not on in control yet, they realize that this is a very important issue to win the 2025 election. There's also been discussions about custom paperwork, so it would be more easy to access the EU single market for the businesses, and that solves the problem of businesses having trouble to compete with the EU businesses. Rishi Sunak will also remain. The Conservative Party will have an inside battle between Rishi Sunak will remain ties with the EU and cooperate with agreements and sort of stay divorced, but have all these arrangements like customs paperwork to not exclude themselves from the EU single market, or pretend that Brexit was a success, and because that is what Boris Johnson gained so many votes and immense popularity for. But we just see, as in this article, the Guardian view on Brexit's borders a slow dawning of economic reality. So, and it also states further down in the article that Brexit economically was a major failure for Britain, and we can also see the effects on that green transition. The UK planned to replace household gas boilers, which was the least energy inefficient way to bring heat, with gas pumps, and last year they had 69,000 installed, and Rishi Sunak plans on 600,000 by 2028. But in comparison to the 69,000, Germany installed over 230,000 last year. So minor progress, but still, in comparison to what they were before, it is a improvement still. Rishi Sunak also planned to change the EU emissions trading schemes, which I talked about earlier, which was the permits that cost money for businesses to emit, and they will change to the EU emissions trading scheme. Sunak is very also much for electric vehicles, and despite his own party disagreeing on the mass production and manufacturing of electric vehicles, he stands his ground on that. And also next month, the new energy bill will reach its final stages in the parliament, so it will be exciting to follow that.